and thank you for joining us for the webinar on how to develop mobile technology strategy for HR function in partnership with DronaHQ. I am Shweta from People Matters, and before speaking about today's agenda, let me give you a brief about the topic. Mobile devices are everywhere, and every employee in your enterprise has one. However, most companies do not know how to establish a balance between cost effectiveness and manageable mobile apps which are secured, scalable, and adoptive. In this webinar, we will discuss making HR redundant at Future Group, HR mobile app story of Future Group, challenges faced while developing HR app, phased scale HR app strategy for enterprises, and technology considerations, stepping in the shoes of CIO or CISO to get your app right. Let me now introduce you to the speakers for this webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Vaibhav Date, Head Talent Management, Future Group. Vaibhav comes with more than a decade of experience in talent management and development in the HR domain. He holds an MBA and has done business management from IIM Calcutta. He has substantially contributed to the fields of leveraging technology for organizational diagnostics, talent assessment and development, leadership identification and development, coaching and mentoring, among others. We have Jinen Dedhia, co-founder, DronaHQ. Jinen co-founded DronaHQ in 2007, an enterprise mobility platform company. He and his team worked with over 50 plus L&D, employee engagement and internal communication teams across companies to build a whole mobility solution for HR function with best-in-class user experience. Jinen oversees market development, team building and overall operations of the company. Our partner for today's webinar is DronaHQ. DronaHQ is an enterprise mobile platform that helps elevate mobile experience of an enterprise user to a new height. Its container technology enables user to access all enterprise apps in one place. Need to sign in just once, and all apps can be easily upgraded without any hassle for any user. With over 200,000 users across enterprise, it has been a proven and stable mobile platform of choice for many business leaders. We have saved time for you to ask questions at the end of the webinar. For those attending the webinar live, you can submit questions anytime during the presentation through the Q&A tab. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have an exciting agenda for today, so without any further delay, I am going to hand over the webinar microphone to Vaibhav and Jinen. Over to you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jinen here, and very quickly, I think I'm just going to run you through a quick agenda that we have here, right? Overall, we are basically going to talk a little bit about how the ifs and buts of actually going about developing a mobile application, right, for an entire HR function. So when I say mobile application, we are actually talking about the different services that you probably would like to provide to your end employees. Maybe let's call them as employee self-service services that you may want to bring in. And apart from that, transactional or the business apps, right? So along with my co-panelists, I think together we are going to cover the agenda in the following way. We are going to start talking about a little bit about the challenges in the HR industry, and this is where I think Vaibhav will throw light in terms of what exactly was the goal for Future Group when you speak about HR function, and how did they look about solving it using going the amplifying route, right? And what were the expectations and how was this met? And whatever was the approach that they took, what were the benefits that they eventually realized, right? And apart from that, we are going to go about analyzing from there on what exactly they do right in terms of what Future did right to get the mobile strategy in place. And that's where I think we're going to start talking a little bit more about the technology piece that comes in and how does it really help them scale their overall HR mobility goals, right? And I think we're going to summarize and we will throw it open to the Q&A. So that's a brief agenda that we have here. I hope this is in line with why you are here. And I think I'm going to quickly hand it over to Vaibhav.
Hi guys, good morning. Largely putting, let me start with some of the thoughts that we had in mind when we started exploring how can we leverage technology. So largely speaking, as an HR, and I'm sure largely most of you would agree, there's a whole lot of time that we end up spending to just pass on and cascade the HR agenda, be it in terms of aligning people with the objective, the larger organizational goal, or be it with making life of an employee simpler, or it could be about performance management. It could be about training need identification, tracking the development, so on and so forth. And most of it are transactional in nature. Now, interestingly, we as an organization, Future Group, we had most of these challenges, as you see right up there, which are far more transactional. However, we had something far more exciting happening in the organization, right? Which is what we were focusing on largely. So when we started looking at building some technology, or rather exploring technology as a platform, the idea was very simple. The idea was, how do we get our HR platform HR redundant, right? Sounds like a controversial statement here, but yes, actually at Future Group, we are working towards getting HR redundant from all the possible transactional elements where a technology can be leveraged. More importantly, it made a lot of sense to us at the juncture where we as Future Group are aiming towards very, very ambitious a goal. And that goal is about multiplying ourselves by 5 times in the next 6 years, which is very, very ambitious. And if you have to do that, and if you have to reach our goal, HR plays a very significant role out there. And that's the reason we wanted to get HR redundant from all the transactions or the time that an HR spends in getting the transactions done. So while we started building on or looking at exploring, if we have got a vision and which is about multiplying ourselves by 5 times in the next 6 years, we need to be operating at speed. So there is largely 2 things that we need to be focusing upon. One, because there will always be a talent crunch. Second, there will definitely be a time crunch. So we wanted to do everything at speed, and we wanted to make sure that while we are operating at speed, we constantly keep entire population, which is about 40,000 plus employees, aligned with what we are driving and aiming towards. Now, I'm sure most of you will be in sync with me when I use the word alignment, because aligning 40,000 plus population on the larger agenda and the goal, and keeping them informed on a day-to-day basis as to how are we progressing, what's happening, what's new, what are the new strategies, what are the new tactical approaches that we are taking. And that's the reason we thought mobile apps makes a lot of sense. Another reason what motivated us to explore these apps as a platform was the average age of my organization is 26, which is pretty young. And in today's world, they're constantly on smartphones and using apps. Even at a store level, most of our employees do have smartphones. In certain stores, we also have given them Wi-Fi. So for them, it becomes easier to access information, and for us, it becomes easier for getting them aligned with what we are largely driving, right? So that's what I mean when I say making HR redundant. So some of the thoughts that we had when we spoke about creating those apps, and while we started doing that, and as I said, our 3 major agendas was alignment. Second, make sure that we have a constant flow of talent. Third, we have everybody moving at a particular speed. We wanted to make sure that there is reward and recognition happening. The reward mechanisms are in place. There's a whole lot of transparency that we build in. So with these larger thoughts, we started exploring certain options, certain modules or applications that we can build. So when we looked at the market, we realized what's available in the market is not what really satisfies our needs. So we started customizing those thoughts. So one of the very interesting thoughts, as you see on the slide up there, continuous development. And then I just want to highlight 2 very interesting thought and a fact that we were largely working on. So just if you have to work at speed, right, then we need to be constantly monitoring speed. Now, one way of doing speed is kind of understand what is this. So if I have to diagnose the speed of my organization, speed of my organization is the speed of my employees. Speed of my employees will be determined by the set of competencies, the set of skill sets that they have. So rather than looking at evaluating competencies alone, we said let's look at the outcome matrix, which is speed of execution and action, and speed is absolutely demonstrable. So largely, we thought, okay, possibly if we have to diagnose speed of the organization, we can very well do that by doing assessment of speed of that individual through something like a 360-degree feedback, because it's absolutely observed behavior, observed dimension there. So we did a 360 survey, and then when we looked at the data, we realized rather than waiting for an annual survey or half-yearly review to happen, can we have a constant access to the speed of the organization, right? And that's how we started exploring a partner or started looking at creation of an app. Today, largely at Future Group, we have an app called Speed and Imagination, which is an inbuilt 360-degree feedback process. So if I have to rate my colleagues, I just need to open an app, go into this Speed and Imagination app. On the drop list, which I have got a list of customers, vendors, I can just rate anybody, and at a larger on the larger platform, the departmental heads, the business heads, the CEOs, the zonal heads, everybody gets to know the speed of their units, right? Now, idea was if you see the speed going down or speed decreasing, all that you have to do is just inject a steroid and then you start moving. Similarly, the idea is to kind of bring the analytics so quickly and at a dynamic level for a business head to take decisions, it becomes far more easy. So while I'm talking about speed on one end, we are also talking about other elements like employee engagement on the other end. So idea was, why to wait for a year to get the employee engagement data? Why can't we have an app, right? Because my engagement is a state of mind. It's about happiness. So rather than looking at engagement alone, the idea was to look at employee happiness, and happiness is a state of mind. It is every hour, every day kind of stuff. We can't really look at something which is annual, especially, and as most of us would have experienced, that these surveys are always administered after performance bonus payout. So most of the time the scores are always high. So we said, okay, rather than getting into misleading information, let's have something far more concrete. So that's how we started building more apps, because if you're there on the app, you can come, you can give an information all over again. Similarly, we have got multiple other aspects like putting everything, the entire training and development calendar sits on the mobile app. So my training team doesn't run around behind people trying to get nominations, which is one of the biggest challenge which all the training professionals face, getting the batch full. And the reason why this challenge happens is because most of my participants are not completely aware of what are the trainings happening, what is the content of the training, who is the trainer, who should attend, why should they attend. Largely, most of the organizations, even including us, we used to have a mailer kind of an approach where half of the employees do end up ignoring the internal communication mails that you end up receiving. So we realized the communication was something critical if you have to excite people to attend training, because training is not the domain of an HR. The employee should own the training space. He needs to be owning the development space for himself. So if I have to pass the power in the hands of employee, I need to make sure that entire information is available in his hands for him to know what are the trainings happening, where are they happening, who should attend, what will I earn, what will I gain, what will I learn at the end of the day. So we created an app for which is as simpler and as classy like your Book My Show, where you can go and book your movie tickets. Similarly, the Book My Training app kind of gives you an opportunity to understand, know the training programs, and kind of book a ticket for yourself, go and attend the training program. So and so forth. There are several apps that we started creating, and when we started cascading those apps, of course, it wasn't an easy journey. One, possibly we were the first ones to launch about almost 9 apps today for employees, and these are something which are value-adding apps apart from the transactional apps like your policies, your information and stuff like those, which is just an information download apps. But we have got about 9 apps, right from 360-degree feedback happening on the mobile app, moving into the entire talent management piece sitting onto a mobile app. So which makes life easy, and more importantly, more than making life easy, my HR is now free to contribute and add and think the next level rather than running behind employees to get the information or pass the information. So this is how we started building mobile apps, and largely when we started doing it, there were certain thoughts that we had. So on one end, it sounds very exciting having 9, 10 apps, but if you end up just imagining, if you have to end up telling 40,000 people 9 times that, okay, this is an app, please go and download, it is hell of a task, right? You can't be expecting, you can't, so while on one end we would end up saying, okay, get HR redundant, and then you end up getting HR involved in, getting these employees to download 9 different apps, and the journey still is on. We're not stopping at 9 apps. There are 3 more apps in the pipeline. So we were looking for a partner who can get onboarded with us. So we were looking at a partner who can not only create the apps, but is also open to help us spark several other apps. Some of them, or most of them, have been developed by Drona, but we had other thoughts also. And then we needed a container where we can put all our apps. So for my employees, I just need to get them to download just one app, and then I can just start pushing in other mini apps into the one mother app. And that's how we met up with Drona, guys, because among all the partners that we evaluated in market, almost 15, 20 of those, these were the only set of bunch of people who came and said, okay, we are interested to partner your journey, and we are open to offer you a container where you can come and park your whatever product that you want to do, and then we have our own development team. And that's how the journey began about 24 months to 2 years, almost 2 years back, and the journey is going strong and good. Largely speaking, why the journey is going strong and good is because, as you see on the screen, these are several apps that we have launched, another 4, 5 in the process. But why I said journey continues to go strong is because of all of this, my organization is able to rapidly scale up every experience, every information that we want to pass. The speed at which we get our apps developed, because as I said, we don't have time. Time for us is the biggest resource. So we wanted a partner who can do a rapid development, and apps, if they are not rapidly developed and introduced, the entire the excitement is any which way is lost, right? Another important aspect is, if you look at my 40,000 employees, out of that larger portion are not necessarily well-educated employees. So for them, the ease of use was the most critical. So my store-level employees standing on the store, they're not very familiar with complex products, right? So we wanted something far and easy. So we are working on an agenda that if any application, if it requires more than 3 clicks, the app is useless. We don't want to use that app because it requires more than 3 clicks. So the idea was to simplify the entire user experience and restrict any usage to less than 3 clicks. Max he needs to do is just 3 clicks. So we started our journey about 2 years, a year almost. We started, most of our apps went live, a year and a half now rather. And then one of the most rewarding and encouraging feedback from the businesses, the business owns it, it's not the HR who's owning it. So once I've created these apps, my business starts pushing them. The leaders own them. So we as an HR, we have got ourselves redundant, saying that we are just a facilitator here. It's you who needs to be driving it. And they're enjoying the journey because some of the feedback is they see a business impact happening because of some of these apps. Right? Even as a Future Group on larger platform, we see growth happening because of the employee experience going up. One of the very interesting feedback which came through, and this is one candidate who's giving this feedback in writing when we went live with so many apps, with a very clear message that the idea is to pass on the power in the hands of E. One feedback which comes through is, I decided not to move out of this organization when I got to know that so much of is being done to help me grow professionally and personally. And I guess as an HR, if I'm able to stop one who's giving it in writing, that he decided not to resign and move out because of the power that comes into his hand, which is far more unique, far more classy, far more trendy, far more millennial first in perception, I guess my job is done. Because my employees is saying, oh, I'm happy, my business is saying they're getting benefited, I guess in a way I've got my HR redundant any which ways, because then nobody's pointing fingers at HR for either ways, right? And then they've started perceiving HR as a business partner and not somebody who's just doing a transactional work out there. The proof is right up there when Mr. Biani himself goes in the media saying, okay, these apps have actually helped improve the business, right? And it's all out. It was all out in Economic Times in December 2015, where my overall organizational speed. Now, Mr. Biani himself keeps monitoring the overall organizational speed. So my reviews in my organizations have moved beyond just reviewing numbers to reviewing speed score. So every manager, every leader who reviews an employee is first starts his review based on speed score, because the belief is if you have the competencies and skill sets and if you're delivering work, it will get reflected in your speed score any which ways. So my reviews have started happening on speed score, and that's what has eventually helped us contribute to the business growth. And I mean, that's a huge compliment which comes through from the business leaders and Mr. Biani himself saying that, okay, these apps really have contributed to the business growth. So that's largely from the experience or the case study that we had at Future Group. So for more information in terms of how we went about the journey, I'm just passing on the mic to Jinen to take it up from here, possibly to give you more information.
Sure. Thanks, Vaibhav. I think you have left very little for me to actually add. But I think I'll just look at, more or less play a role of an analyst over here, right? And I would be as a third-party observer or market observer, I'm going to actually draw a picture for the rest of the audience here to see what exactly they did and, what were the major takeaways probably for anybody else who's looking at building a mobile app for the HR, right? So, in a nutshell, right, I think I would, since I come from a very heavy tech background, I understand technology, I understand, business to an extent. So let me just kind of classify the apps that actually Future Group went on, to add onto the, for the employees. Right. It actually started off with deploying off-the-shelf apps that actually DronaHQ comes out with. Right. So everything that I think Vaibhav spoke about, alignment, communication, etc. So those were the things that Future when they got the container, they said, what is it the first thing that we can actually get started pretty soon? So I think very evidently, I think the entire it really runs in the DNA of the company that speed is really to the core of them, right? And they really took upon what exactly is there available, and then they just started using it, right? So we call it they were solving the alignment problem using the off-the-shelf capability of sending communication to the users, right? Apart from that, they actually brought in certain, I would say, bespoke applications that they were really that they were really concerned about. So, for example, that Vaibhav mentioned, Speed and Imagination. That is actually a bespoke app. They can completely customized because it wasn't really available in the market, and they went about building an entire custom application around it to be made sure that this can be given on to the users. Third, they went about actually going ahead and taking the third-party applications like reward and recognition, or probably the mood, the happiness index factor in the company, etc., which came from third-party different best-in-class vendors who could really go ahead and they could do this, right? So, these were some of the apps that they, right from transactional apps to business-focused apps, they went around and they, in last 2 years, they really went heavy on this, right? So, moving on, I think, let's try to understand, right? One of the core things that they actually did, what is it the future is, right? When we start thinking, right? I think one of the key core things that they really started thinking was absolutely user-centric. In my opinion, the challenge of for any technology offering that you actually bring in for your people in your enterprise, the core challenge is at the heart is adoption, right? And when I say adoption, I would really, in the mobility world, we will break it down into two core things. One is, making your app discoverable. So irrespective what sort of an infrastructure you may have in your enterprise, maybe you may have very sophisticated mobile device management tools or mobile application management tools, etc. Yet making that app of yours, wherein you say, hey, this is my HR initiative and here is my app, and it to be discovered and to be made available to the people, that remains one huge challenge. Right, because irrespective, even if you have an MAM or an MDM, those are the things that will probably eventually be published onto an internal app store, right? So no matter your first application, you will actually face a challenge of getting people really adopt, really download, right? So discover the app, download the app, log into the app. So, typically when you run, when you start thinking like a product manager, you start thinking in terms of the user onboarding, right? And like any typical consumer tech marketing startup guy would tell you, this is typically a cost of user acquisition that you would end up actually burning, right? So what I think, in my opinion, Future really thought about it really futuristically, like saying that, hey, this is not the only app that I would want to bring on for my users. Like Vaibhav said, we may have 8 to 9 applications coming about in probably a year's time or 2 years' time. And I don't really want to, incur a user acquisition cost 9 times. That's not scalable. So Future said, why not actually bring a single application, let's call it as a container HR app in that sense, and, which kind of unifies the entire user experience. It says, just download the application one time, just sign into the application one time. Now, signing on into an application one time also means a lot of stuff, right? You do not really need to maintain user entries and exits into 9 different applications, but rather everything moves onto one single application, which can be in turn married to your AD or, any federation system that you may have internally. So that's really a mechanism that you really cut down from your other remaining applications, the entire, gamut of things that comes with user signing onto the application and then maintaining the user management and then user entry and exit out of the system. So that is all out of the window, right? You just do it once and with the container, and for the remaining applications, just go about looking at the point function that you really are looking and expecting out of the app, and just focus on the business problem around it that could be solved, right? So all these things are out of the window, right? At the same time, because all HR apps are now coming right within one single application, you do not really need to ask user to discover these apps. Rather, they are actually over the air deployed onto the user's device, which means every time the user really opens up your HR app, he would go about finding your other applications that you're launching. And since this is very specific to HR as a container, you are not really colluding with any other application. So user understands whatever is going to come here is going to be an HR initiative, right? So in that sense, it really helps the user, right? And at the end of the day, because if you see, right, like whoever said, every application that you are actually bringing on to the user, right, that's not the version 1.0 is not the end of it, right? You would come about with more and more features on top of it. There will be constant upgrades. There will be bug fixes, etc. So we call it as upgrades. And trust me, from a user experience perspective, if he has so many internal applications and then he has to manually go and upgrade all of these applications, it's not going to really fit into place, right? So this is again another problem that actually the containerization approach really helps them solve, right? So it from a user's perspective, he doesn't really need to do anything. So the pain versus gain matrix is absolutely set right. There is zero pain, and then there is only the gain, the upside, which is making a lot of things available on the mobile devices, right? And without really doing much in that sense, right? So apart from this, I think we will also look at probably if you see typically per application, right? It really goes on to take 7 or 8 months to build or get your one application right? Now, typically the reasons are because once you start sketching your business requirement document, and you go about placing into the market, and then you start getting the vendor responses and stuff like that. Then there comes the IT angle of the requirement. You want your application to have only multiple users, single user with multiple devices should log in. What happens in the context of when a user actually loses one of the devices, a device should get unauthorized. What happens to my security? Does it really carry the right encryption standards, etc.? So, there are tons of factors that can actually add to the overall timelines that you are eventually looking at, right? Now, given that most of these heavy lifting part on the security bit, on the, on all the important aspects of your application like single sign-on, push notifications, etc., being all taken up and given into a pre-built sort of container application, this really helps you reduce your time to launch any subsequent application, because now you're actually only talking about the your point solution with your vendor, right? And I mean, a simple analysis that we saw, right? Future built and deployed around 11 applications in 20 months at an average of 2 applications a month. Now, I mean, to be really honest with you all, that's really quite an achievement, because getting your application out in 2 months, given through all the UATs and the beta stages that your application goes through, is quite a remarkable thing to achieve, given that, most of the major publishers, including Gartner, would really peg a guesstimate of around 6 to 12 months to get your app up and running for your last mile user, right? So that's another thing I think that Future just got it right, because of the approach they took. Right, and this is exactly what I was talking about, that every element of your application which is not really part of your core BRD, you don't really care about whether the device is jailbroken, or whether was it routed, or whether it has any OAuth or SAML integration into it, whether it blocks any copy paste. These are all typically CISO or the CIO concerns, right, which probably may come at a surface at a little later stage of your HR application's life cycle, right? But it has all the potential to create the enormous delays that probably it can bring in. And imagine these delays not just for one application, but probably all the remaining applications that you actually bring in. And imagine the cost that it associates, because this is not just one application that you are actually dealing with, but all the 9 application vendors, they are supposed to bring in all the similar set of features, right? So, this is just another thing that, why Future could also do it in a very cost-effective way, because it didn't really have to ask you any of the vendors to, handle any of these items. They just went about saying that for all the bespoke apps, all they really cared about, get my business application to the way we really want, to the T, right? That's exactly what they really got. And probably I think with this, I may just give you a little bit of information on what is containerization technology all about, right? So I'm sure everybody in this webinar must have heard about something called as a Docker, right? So Docker is typically a containerization technology for delivering web applications seamlessly, irrespective of where you are running those applications, be it Linux or be it Windows or anything, right? This is exactly, I think, we are an analogous system, probably an analogous solution. We are container for mobile apps, right? So what we really mean to say is we give you a very heavy pre-built application, right? We call it as our container, which sits across devices. I mean, DronaHQ is compatible with what we call as all the operating systems out there, like iOS, Android, different versions of iOS, different versions of iOS, and Android and Windows, etc. Right? And if you go on to see, right, everything that you, the pre-built application comes with a very heavy runtime on top of it, right, along with the management features. So all the core aspects to do with the user management, upgrade management, probably role or access management, etc., they're all bundled inside DronaHQ's pre-built container, which is all cloud controlled, right? And at the same time, over the runtime, you can go about delivering any application that you may probably think is required for your, for your user. So, as we see with Future's case, they went on delivering and adding all the way up to 11 applications on top of it. And I'm sure most of these applications also saw a sea of changes, right? So what you see on the app number 2 is a delta change that they went about deploying on top of it, right, for the last month user. So this is exactly how the container technology can really transpose itself or any organization. Typically, if you're looking at rolling out your HR application, right, I think the core essence over here is to think long term, not just think one application. And if you are not thinking one application, then you are actually thinking with a vision. And if that is the case, then I think you must really think about what really it comes out with, right? Delivering n number of applications to your users. And the resulting effect is, like you see on the right side of my screen, right, there are n number of things that you can really start thinking about. Your HR help desk, your reimbursement trackers, etc., all transactional applications on one side, plus something for your leaders, something for different things, n number of different things it can really transpose itself into. So probably I think just to summarize the benefit of containerizing HR apps into a single app, I would say we can look at it in 3 different dimensions. One is an end user benefit with a single, I think without reiterating much, you are getting a single login for the user, one single app to download, and all my updates, etc., go to be managed by the container. That's really quite an experience, right? At the end of the day, because the container really gives a lot of offline capability to the application overall, right? Any application that you load on top, side load on top, right, will also carry all the offline capabilities. So that really allows the user to seamlessly access content as well as apps. At the same time, from a business leader perspective, I think, or the one who's actually owning this, he ends up saving time. He ends up to roll out applications, ends up saving costs, right? At the same time, they are also ensuring that they are on the right side of the compliance, because all the heavy lifting on the compliance related to security, IT, etc., with the different other stakeholders in your business comes really naturally built in the container, and whatever are the suite, I would say the tweakings which are required is not now in n times effort, but it's just a one-time effort, right? And hence it really helps you build scale into your entire thing, right? And apart from not just that, it actually can make you think like a product manager at one end, because you are now, since you have a technology in place wherein you can start giving them stuff in phase-wise manner. So imagine a project which probably you would really wanted to have 20 different features all bundled into same app, and it was taking you about 7 to 8 months to launch. Now you can actually break it down into different phases. So as a business leader, you can really bring speed as one of the perspective, and you can go out in the market with a minimum viable product, something that you really believe this is a must-have need in your application, with a clear-cut understanding that at a late point of time, you can start rolling out more features, right? And from a technology benefit perspective, I think it's very clear that you are able to roll out a single I would say, a very unified user experience across all your applications, right? You are able to bring scale. You are able to bring the best-in-class applications, right, from third-party vendors, right? Like what Future did, they got in about 5 to 6 different third-party vendors, and their applications are deployed on the same place, right? So apart from that, you bring cross-platform capability right on the day one. Your first app actually goes out live in less than 2 weeks time, with using all the existing off-the-shelf features. So, those are some of the technology benefits that you marry right up front, right? So probably summarizing, I would say the steps that probably you can go about building your app strategy would be, I think, first things first, you assess what really you think your HR function can really, as a function, what are the interventions with the employees that you would really want to bring on the mobile device, right? That's what we call as employee self-service thing that you really want to bring, the business growth perspective, what you really want to bring. And then if you really believe that, you really carry a vision to come out with multiple applications at different point in time, right, taking one step at a time, then I think containers sort of a technology is something that you must really look at bringing very early on in your life cycle, right? Simply because maybe today you just have one or two applications to go on, but it's a container which can actually fuel in whatever that is required to bring in scale in your overall deployment strategy, right? Along with that, I think it's a great idea to look at whatever that is available off the shelf. I mean, not just what the container has to offer, but even from the market, what is it that it can really offer, right? So obviously, it should marry the overall, the other goals of your organization, and it should meet other constraints of your organization, like whatever the data policy, the privacy policies that exist in your company. But I'm assuming that once those things are taken care of, there are still few things and turnarounds in which you can actually look at utilizing the off-the-shelf capabilities. Because off-the-shelf capabilities that you marry, right, it will bring in best-in-class user experience for your users. And trust me, the user experience is consumerizing, right, all across your enterprise applications. So, these are the things which will really bring you speed and the best-in-class from the market, right? And at the same time, probably at the backdrop, you can start figuring out a way with your internal IT teams, etc., to look at taking your custom applications, homegrown applications which are there deep down there within your firewall, how to build interfaces of it on the mobile and make it available, like, maybe approval workflows or processes, etc., whichever, you feel are critical, right? And eventually, I think going with this phase-wise route, I think you are also making sure that, you are not just a one-time player, but a long-term player for your end employees. And that's the value I think HR can bring in at a later point of time, right, or over a period of time. So net, I think having a secure, scalable, and supportable strategy, I think these are the few building blocks which I think I'll leave you with, right? And these are some of the customers or some of the companies who are actually containerizing their apps on DronaHQ, right? So I think I'm just gonna leave you with this, and I think we can move on to the Q&A. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jinen and Vaibhav. It was such an engaging discussion, and oh my God, we have so many questions pouring in. So without wasting any time, I'm going to take one which is coming from Pramod. So he says, this is a brilliant initiative, and I'm sure we would see the adoption increasing with increased awareness among the employees. What is the possibility of integrating the functionality of multiple apps and combining into one?
Hi, let me try answering this. This is Vaibhav. Now, the point is very right. So what happens is, one, you keep life simple of an employee, right? So even if you want to link it as an ecosystem, you have linked them when you're containerizing it. But if you start putting every element into one app, it is going to become so heavy and complex for the employee to use it. So as I said, 3 clicks and you should be out of that app. Your job should be done in that app, right? So categorizing them in terms of whether you want to do a reward, you want to appreciate, you want to do a PMS, you want to put your balance scorecard scores on, whatever it is, it becomes easier if you within a container created different subunits there. So if I've come for one application, I go and I just make sense out of that. I use that app and move out of that app. But at the back end, what happens is I may start prompting him to move from one app to another. For example, if I rate somebody on speed app, after having rated someone, it automatically prompts me to go and either give him some feedback on imagination, or maybe prompts me to go and reward him if he has done extremely good work. So this is how I see it.
Great. Thanks, Vaibhav, for answering that. So moving on to the next question, it's from Richa and it is on employee engagement. So to Vaibhav, she is asking how does the app leads to more employee engagement? And to Jinen, she wants to know how can we leverage technology to drive employee engagement? And how many organizations are implementing this now, especially if the business is very sensitive and demands high confidentiality?
Rishabh, in two ways. One way, when you look at employee engagement, now that's one of the very umbrella term that has been largely used. So one is just capturing an information about how engaged an employee is, and second is really doing activities for engaging employees. Right now, just imagine if as an employee, I tell you, Richa, you are allowed to pick up your own training program, go and sit, attend the training program, come back. As an employee, I'm giving you every information which is not, so the power, if you look at largely an employee gets engaged with power, and today the power is of information. Now, if you look at employees in the organization, they're aligned with the larger agenda with the constant flow of information, right? Just the sheer simple communication that employee is, the entire power of his growth is his hands, I guess the engagement starts happening there. And at the same time, apps like Moodometer that we have possibly gives you an opportunity to employee to tell what's his mood today. Now, just imagine at one of the days we have a big sale happening, and then I realize in one of the zones the Moodometer suggests, which is like a meter that I see at a CEO level, the mood levels of employees are not pretty up. All that he needs to do is just quickly step in and inject a steroid. It could be a town hall, it could be a conversation, it could be anything. I mean, if somebody, not an HR or along with an HR, if a business leader is able to quickly address the swings in the mood and start injecting steroids at the right time, I guess the employee engagement levels are continuing to go or maintain at a high level. That's how we started building it up in this organization.
The question on how can you use or how can you leverage technology to drive engagement, I think technology is just an enabler, I believe, right? I think what really goes here is, I think I'll pick it up from what Vaibhav said, right? Giving the employee some power in his hand and making him feel that, he can really contribute, he can really have his thoughts being heard, etc. at the right levels, I think will really, really make him a lot engaged. And this is what technology can actually help you, to bring those connectivity within your different, I think, different, I would say, in the hierarchy, or may help you in breaking the silos, right? Making your voice really heard cross domain. Now, that's really where I think technology can really bring its core strengths. I don't know if I answered that, but probably taking your second part, I think, in my honest opinion around what sort of, how many companies are really implementing this, it's a tough thing to say, but I think we would have touched nearly about 50 odd HR organizations who would have really done something to do with HR, with employee engagement, right? So that's the number I can really, give you from our own implementation work. But I'm sure the overall, if at all I take a top India-centric, then the number would really be a good number. I mean, definitely 200 to 300 plus companies would have done something to do with employee engagement using mobile laser technology. But of course, if you look at the larger technology, the more which are already I would say existing technologies, right? Not really using mobile as a medium. I think most of the companies would be doing in some or the other ways.
Right. Thank you, Jinen and Vaibhav, for answering both the questions. So the next question is from Pooja. She wants to know how much time does it take for every incremental app to be installed on user device if they have the DronaHQ container?
Okay. So, very simple answer to this is this all happens real time. So let's assume you have another application which is ready and your container is already deployed with your, say, 5,000 odd people in your organization. and here is your new app which you would like to launch, right? And you are already beta tested it and about to go live into production. Then I think the moment you upload it onto the container and you make it available to the right set of users, from the very next minute, I think if they open the application, everybody should start seeing that application onto the device.
Great, great. So, Jinen, we have a couple of questions from Seema. So, we are going to take two of them. So, she wants to know, how is an employee motivated to use the app in comparison to using desktop or laptop version? And secondly, what kind of infrastructure is required to promote mobile adoption in an organization?
Okay. So I think I'll answer both of them for you, and probably will ask Vaibhav if he has any thoughts. Question number one is how is the guy or how the employees more how do you need motivation to start using the app vis-a-vis a laptop or a desktop? So I think we are living in a world which is which needs seamless access. It needs ubiquitous access. It doesn't really matter whether I am really looking at doing my shopping on an app of Flipkart, or I'm actually doing it on a laptop or a desktop. As long as I'm able to do my work, right, it doesn't really make a difference. So, for example, I can really look at booking my movie tickets probably on both the devices. I mean, it just depends on what is more accessible to me right now and what is going to be more convenient to me right now, right? So from an employee perspective, I think we've been in the industry for about 9 years, and I what we really think is when I speak to the last mile users, most of the time, most of the people are really looking at finishing their job faster, go home faster. And if there is anything that helps them do that, I think mobile is definitely a great piece in doing that, right? There are tons of things that they can really do by a simple thing that Vaibhav just said, 3 clicks out of an user experience, and you are able to approve certain number of things, right? So let's assume you had 20 odd approvals that were pending at your desk, and all you really had to do is 3 clicks and get there. Then why not really do it when you are on your way home? So that's a choice that an employee makes. That's one. Number two, as an HR or as a facilitator of this, you are actually constantly giving in something new on a very continuous basis. So that really keeps you really the last mile user to look forward to something new every now and then.
Just to build up on what Jinen said, when we look at our analytics of the application usage, the majority usage is before 9:30 in the morning and post 6 in the evening. And very interestingly, most of my usage is on weekends when people are at home. I mean, that precisely explains why apps make more sense than desktop and laptops. Over to you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Vaibhav. So, we are running short of time, so we'll just take one last question that has just come up from Nirali.
I've just sent... Sure. So, Shweta, there's one very interesting question which, if you allow me, I may want to take up.
Sure.
But please. After your question.
No, please. We just have time for one question. Go ahead.
Sure. So, there's a very interesting question which has come up from Abulya, I guess. She's asking about how do we ensure sustenance of training post the training program at workplace. I mean, largely speaking, most of the HRs do face this problem because we attend training programs, and ensuring that they take this learning back to the workplace is where most of us face challenges, right? Now, what we realize is it's not about the content of the training. So we do have e-modules, learning modules available for quick learning and stuff like those. But the real challenge post-training is the reinforcement, right? Now, reinforcement, if you start doing that, especially post the training program at workplace, I guess that is going to improve the overall learning process. So just imagine if I'm gamifying the entire experience for you, where most of us would have played Challenge Me or Quiz Up on mobile apps, right? So if for those who have not, just imagine if there's a set of people who have undergone training. Now, and I on a mobile app start a competition amongst them where I can, let's say I challenge Jinen to come and play a game. Now, game is nothing but certain questions about the topic covered. Now, there are questions and you're prompted to give answers to it. The one who scores well starts gaining those golden points or brownie points and starts improving his score on the scoreboard. Now, the moment you start engaging employees post the training program in a gamified platform, I guess the overall learning goes up. And if the overall learning is going to go up, one, they're not only excited and encouraged to attend training programs, but they themselves start realizing how to implement it back to the workplace, because your questions are revolving not on theory, but on the application. So, I mean, that's how sustaining really has helped. Second, what we have done is on an app, we have also built in an IDP tracker, because you end up creating an IDPs and most of the employees end up keeping them in their files, drawers, and HR finds it difficult to really follow up with them. So again, apps or any technology, we have created an app where it kind of tracks the development. It kind of tracks the journey and the movement of an individual on an individual development plan of an employee, where managers are kept informed. I mean, that's how we have largely gone about sustaining the overall the training process.
So we have space for one more question. So I would, like to continue with the question that I was asking before. So it is from Nirali, and it is with respect to the future group case. She wants Vaibhav to, give some examples of how employee communication was done through the app at future group.
So largely, you know what? So in terms of communication, so let me put it in this way. One is communicating and keeping employees informed as to what's happening. Now, as an organization, we have 40,000 employees strong, spread across 6 zones, with stores in 243 cities, with store employees in the stores. Keeping them aware and informed what's happening, not at the group level, but in the media, in the press. What's the plan? What's the strategy? What are the new things coming up? Kind of keeps them aligned, inclined, and engaged. Right, so just communicating and keeping the information updated to the employees. I guess that's how we have been doing that. So we've got a couple of places where we kind of summarize wherever we are in media. There are certain videos of leaders which we put up there, which kind of passes on the information. We have created a platform which is KB Connect, where any information which Mr. Biyani wants to pass is also kind of put up there.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that. And with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar. And once again, we thank today's webinar partner, DronaHQ. And also, our special thanks to our speakers, Vaibhav and Jinen, for this webinar and the invaluable information that they have shared with us today. And I would also like to thank everyone in this webinar for being such an enthusiastic audience. We will come back with you with many more. So with this, we conclude today's webcast. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.